Welcome to News 9. You're watching On Point with me. Before I introduce you to today's On Point, let me take you through headlines. Delhi enforces GRAP 3 anti-pollution measures as air quality plummets. GRAP 3 measures to come into force from tomorrow, 8 am. Centre reimposes AFSPA in Manipur 6 police stations, including Jiribam. Uttar Pradesh Public Service Commission decides to conduct PCS preliminary exam in a single day after protests. Dominica to honour Prime Minister Modi with its highest national award. Amit Shah takes a dig at Congress, says Sonia Gandhi's Rahul plane will crash again in Jharkhand. Rahul Gandhi accuses BJP of snatching big projects from Maharashtra and shifting them to Gujarat. Ajit Pawar says, "Batenge to katenge" slogan is not acceptable in Maharashtra. Madras High Court denies anticipatory bail to actor Kasturi Shankar over comments on Telugu migrants. Rajasthan police arrests independent candidate Naresh Meena after he slapped the SDM during bypolls. Bangladesh is steadily slipping towards Islamism and theocracy. Since the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, violence against Hindus has been on the rise. Bangladesh's interim government is also trying to dismantle the legacy of Mujibur Rahman and Awami League brick by brick. This was recently reflected in the removal of the Mujibur's photo from the President's office. In the latest development, Bangladesh's Attorney General Md Asaduzzaman has proposed significant constitutional changes advocating for the removal of word secularism. He argued that with 90% of the population being Muslim, Bangladesh should not be viewed as a secular country. He also called for removing socialism, Bengali nationalism, and the official recognition of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman as the father of the nation. He made these arguments at the Dhaka High Court hearing on constitutional amendment. Asaduzzaman argued that socialism and secularism mentioned in Article 8 do not align with the identity of a predominantly Muslim nation. He is arguing that Muslim nation cannot be both secular and socialist in idea. He pushed for a return to the Constitution's original language, he argues, emphasizing an unwavering faith in Allah. Furthermore, he questioned the relevance of Bengali nationalism in Article 9, suggesting it conflicts with democratic ideals. He also criticized Article 6, which defines national identity based on language, arguing that this approach is divisive and unique to Bangladesh. He also criticized the 15th Amendment and said retaining it undermines the legacy of activists like Abu Sayyid and Mugdo, who led protests during Bangladesh's July 2024 uprising. He argued that the amendments erode democratic values and threaten stability by prolonging authoritarianism. Bangladesh, in the name of democracy, is hurtling towards Islamism. And this brings me to the question, is Bangladesh turning into another Pakistan, Afghanistan? On this issue, I am joined by Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee, former Indian diplomat. Madam, thank you so much for joining me on this show. And Suhas Chakma, Director Rights and Risk Analysis, who has been raising continuously and consistently issues of Chakma in the way their properties were burned by the Islamic group post-street protests. First to you, Ambassador, how do you describe these changes in the constitution and what we in India, Madam, should make of it?
In my book called Bengal and its Partition, an Untold Story, I had explained that the very genesis of the creation of Bangladesh was based on the rejection of religion as a unifying factor and the whole issue of Bengali nationalism, the Bengali language, the Bengali culture, its unique identity, which was sought to be eroded by the leaders of the then united Pakistan, but based in West Pakistan. At that time, there was the efforts made in East Pakistan to impose Urdu in the schools and to make Urdu the main language and to erode Bengali nationalism. As a result, there was a language movement, and the establishment of the Awami League was based on the whole issue of secularism, because the founder of the Awami League was of the opinion that what distinguished East Pakistan from West Pakistan was the fact that its very raison d'etre, its creation, should be based on Bengali nationalism and its unique place in the history of South Asia, and therefore it had to be secular so as to be a country that would attract people of Bengali origin for their culture, language, civilization, and not for religion. What is now being done is to return Bangladesh back to what it was under the almost, you could say, colonial yoke of West Pakistan. In other words, it seeks to undo the very reason why it was created, in which case the natural question would arise that if there is no Bengali nationalism in its constitution, if it is not secular and not a good place for all Bengalis who wish to be part of that country to stay in safety, including the Bangladeshi Hindus, the Bangladeshi minorities, etc., then they should ask to be reunited back with Pakistan. What is the difference? Where is the difference? So in other words, the Attorney General is seeking to undo the history and the movement which led to the creation of Bangladesh, which led to the terrible genocide perpetrated by the Pakistani army, which led to India's help in the creation of Bangladesh. He is trying to undo history. You cannot do that. History cannot be undone.
That's a brilliant point, actually. Very few people have argued like this way, Ambassador, you have argued. If you betray the basic principle, then you should reunite with Pakistan. Suhas, question for you is, what does it mean for Hindus? What does it mean for Chakmas? What does it mean for indigenous people in CHT? You know, the issues you had taken up, the letters you had written. What does it mean for them when someone, the AG says, drop socialism, drop secularism, it's not compatible with 90% Muslim population's ethos. What does it mean for minorities?
Well, I think the minorities, irrespective of whichever political party is in power, they have always been targeted. Let's admit the fact that, you know, when Bangladesh became independent in 1972, all the properties which were seized under the Enemy Properties Act, we are actually bested with the government and then our leaders. I do not see any difference between the Awami League government or the BNP government. This had to come at some stage. I think what is essential to understand in this particular issue is that it's a drama. It's a drama by Yunus to remain in power. If they had this whole petition challenging the constitutional validity of the 15th Amendment, if you are so respectful towards the Constitution of Bangladesh, then you could not have removed the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, you could not have the Prime Minister. There were some procedures which you had to respect. So if you ask me today what is the status of the Constitution of Bangladesh, well, it has been thrown under the bus. So they cherry pick this portion, that portion, and the only reason why they are challenging this particular amendment, 15th Amendment, is to bring back the interim government. So if you bring back the interim government, say by the judgment of this Supreme Court, then what was Yunus doing for the last so many days, from 8th August when he took over. So he doesn't have the mandate to carry out reform. So what is he doing? He wants to prolong and remain in power as long as possible. And he has done two things. One, he has initiated many reforms, which are not reforms by any means. And he will not call elections till reforms are concluded. So this reform, if you go against that, including the BNP, then the students are let loose. So he is ruling the country by the mob rule, which is the students. So anybody could come up and claim, including the Jamaat-e-Islami as students. So that's one part. The second part, which he is trying to do, is to create the legal basis for his existence. Because if you remove the 15th Amendment of the Constitution, then you bring the interim constitution back, then he will remain in power for the next 6 months. But even next 6 months will not be sufficient. So what this challenge before the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, is only one thing: somehow give longer time to Yunus. His mandate is to conduct election, and instead of conducting election, he's prolonging his stay in power in Bangladesh. And if you look at it, all the reforms which he has undertaken, including the challenge to the Constitution of Bangladesh, 15th Amendment. If tomorrow an elected government comes and says, we don't like your amendments, which was drafted by some academics, not elected by the parliament, nominated by the parliament, we'll throw it out. What can you do? So all these are exercises in futility just to keep the old man in power. Nothing else, nothing else. It's unfortunate that the Nobel laureate has become the mobocrat. And I think the West will realize that he is not a democrat, he is a mobocrat. And he is trying to create. In Bangladesh, anybody dissents now, you just have to send, some...
So is Yunus an Islamist?
Oh, absolutely, because he is not allowing the BNP to remain in power. He has decided Awami League will not come in the political process at all. So that's why he has banned the Chhatra League of the Awami League as a terrorist organization. And today, what happens? You had, Chief Justice of Bangladesh along with 5, judges removed because some student get out the Supreme Court. Then you had 12 judges of the High Court taken out of judicial roster, so they are not performing the judicial tasks. So what is he doing? Anybody says anything, he just has to send some students who will go and say, oh, this is not acceptable. So even the BNP is scared against the students. So he's only at this point of time are the Jamaat-e-Islami.
So this brings me to the question, Ambassador, is Muhammad Yunus, in the name of democracy, spreading Islamism in Bangladesh? Is it going the Egypt way, where Muslim Brotherhood came to power through elections? Or like Turkey, Erdogan, where he came through democratic process and tried to Islamize the entire society? Are we witnessing something like that, or is it different, madam?
I think it's different.
Okay.
You must remember the remark he made when President Trump was elected. He said it was a very dark day for him. It was a solar eclipse. Now you should ask yourself the question, as we all do, why was the election of Trump a solar eclipse for Muhammad Yunus? It's very clear. He was put in by the American deep state to bring about regime change, and now his patrons are going to leave in January, and it is most probable that those who will be handling foreign policy for the Trump administration will not have the same perspective towards Muhammad Yunus at all. So Muhammad Yunus, for instance, the state is becoming bankrupt. He owes a huge amount of money to the private regulatory authority of Mr. Adani. He faces the prospect of electricity getting cut off in Bangladesh. I think he would be better advised to see how he can plug those gaps and do what the political parties of Bangladesh are saying, which is that in the present Bangladeshi constitution, which remains, number one, there has not been a resignation letter from the Bangladesh Prime Minister. Number two, there is no provision for indefinite rule by Yunus on the plea, as our colleague has just said, that of reform which is just an excuse for staying in power. If he does not bring about a process by which there are free and fair elections in Bangladesh, we are running close to 3 months, if I'm not mistaken, 3 to 4 months. So let's say in the next 2.5 months, he would actually be in complete violation of the Bangladeshi constitution, and he would be considered as an extra constitutional source of power. He has to call free and fair elections. As far as the Jamaat is concerned, they have never won the popular vote in Bangladesh. It's always been a straight fight between BNP and Awami League. Yunus himself has got no grassroots support in Bangladesh. As far as the students are concerned, the students are also divided. It's not so simple as that. There are many students who are dedicated to bringing about democracy in Bangladesh. He is unleashing the unruly mob, but mobocracy, as you rightly point out, whether it was after the French Revolution when you had the reign of terror, or in all revolutions thereafter, if you study, and I'm a student of history, if you study what happens when you use a mob to get political gains, is that ultimately you end up by being violently overthrown, usually losing your life. And that is the fate that
Are you
could very
saying
well happen.
revolution devours its own children?
Absolutely. And the best example was the French Revolution, which finally guillotined Robespierre. So if you are a student of history, you would look back at history and say what is happening in Bangladesh is he is unleashing some students, not all. The students are divided. Okay, the advisors he's put, the student advisors are actually holding up governance. In the meantime, Bangladesh is getting bankrupt. Bangladesh is not able to pay its power bills. Bangladesh is getting into a debt trap. Who is going to bail out Bangladesh? He says the election of Trump is a solar eclipse for him. That's very poetic in Bengali, which I will spare the Indian audience who may not know Bengali. He said he used very poetic Bengali for his description. If it's a solar eclipse for him, which I agree with, it is a solar eclipse, he should note that he is now in darkness and pack his bags and leave. It's time for him to leave. If he doesn't leave himself, he will 100% be thrown out 6 months from now. He
6
will
months
not
from
survive.
now. So, Has, do you think it's a turning point that such changes which can be brought about from the top, like Ziaul Haq did in Pakistan? He Islamized the entire society, and subsequently the shape of the Pakistani society also changed. Is this an attempt to change the social fabric from top, or you think that a societal change has happened because even the previous government failed to have a check on the mullahs in politics?
No, I think as Madam Mukherjee had mentioned, that the mullahs do not matter in Bangladesh. We have to realize one thing, that the population in Bangladesh, which is a majority are the Bengali Muslims, they have different identities. At certain point of time, they could become very, very Islamic, but at certain point of time, they could be more Bengali nationalist based on language than anybody else, because you see the 1952 language movement, and sometimes they could be very liberal. And at the end of the day, Bengal eastern part has been the most liberal region among the Muslims in South Asia. So whatever these people are trying to do, they shall never be successful. Of course, I mean, there was grudge or there was anger against Hasina, but that doesn't make Bangladesh, or that's not going to turn Bangladesh into an Islamic country. Anybody tries to do that, they have to pay a heavy price and forget about Islamization or anything else.
Okay.
They cannot fulfill the basic demands, because at certain point of time, people will be asking two things.
Okay.
Political parties want political freedom, which he is denying, and everybody knows he doesn't have any legitimacy, legal, moral, or whatsoever, because the first thing which he did after he became the interim government chief is to give tax exemption to the Grameen Bank. So if you deposit money into the Grameen Bank, it's absolutely tax-free, which is a serious conflict of interest. And the second issue is people want their daily needs, income, economic development.
So as I'm really falling short of time. Okay, Ambassador Mukherjee, you wanted to make a point? Yes, you wanted to make a point.
One small point. I wanted to just say that the other big difference is that what happened when Zia came is the Zia was in control of the Pakistani army. In the case of Muhammad Yunus, he has no such control. He is not a military general. He has not come up through the ranks. He does not exercise military power. He may try to change the army chief and bring in his own person, but he is not a military man. And he is also too old to change fundamental structures in Bangladesh, precisely for the reasons that my brother from Bangladesh has said, which is that the Bengali, be he Hindu like me or a Muslim, we have a DNA which is based on the Bengali language, culture, civilization, cuisine. Even our rituals are all mixed. There are mixed Hindu-Muslim rituals across Bengal, whether it is during Durga Puja or it is during the Muslim festival. This is something unique to Bengal, which only a Bengali knows. So it is not possible for Mr. Yunus, who's lived many years in the West, to suddenly come and reverse the course of history in the eastern part of our subcontinent.
Thank you, Ambassador Mukherjee. Thank you, Suhas, for joining me. That's all on 1, but don't go away. I will be back after a short break. After the break, in the second On Point, we will talk about the reimposition of AFSPA in 6 police stations in Manipur Valley.